Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Nichols. I was just listening to your exchange with Senator West, and I don't want to belabor any points, but I want to make sure that some of the concerns are, one, that the House bill that came over from the House had originally, I think you mentioned this in your layout, had $100 per student, and the current version of the CCR we're looking at is back to $10 per student per average daily attendance. Is that correct?
$10 per student plus $15,000 per campus.
15,
and that is the way HB3 was originally written and filed. It was changed to $100 on the floor with an amendment.
And the committee report requires, when you sent this bill to the House, you'd taken the armed guard requirement out of the bill, and I thank you for that, because that may or may not be the best practice for every campus, and not every school district may be able to afford a licensed peace officer at every campus. But unfortunately, in this conference committee report, it does require an armed guard, but it does have some sort of a just cause exception. Is that correct?
I may have misunderstood your question, but this, as written, the way originally filed and the way it came, we worked it out in the conference committee, it adds a good cause exception.
The good cause exception. And the good cause exemption says that the school district can, for good cause, not have to have an armed guard, but it allows them to have, it doesn't require them to have a licensed peace officer. It can be someone else. It could be a marshal, it could be a guardian, it could be someone else other than a licensed peace officer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And if TEA believes that the schools have not met the minimum requirements for safety in this bill, they can appoint a conservator, but not a conservator of the whole school district, a conservator for that campus, or how does that work?
It would be for the school district.
For the whole school district?
No, excuse me. It's not the individual campus, and it's not the whole school district. It's just a safety portion of the school district, which would normally be on a per campus basis. But it's possible the school may not turn in their report on their emergency operating plan, in which case it would be the district, but they don't take over the school district operations, only the safety component of it.
Does HB3 contain all of the cost, or does it entertain the mandates that we've passed this year? For example, and these are good things, to have a panic button in every classroom. Does it list everything that you must have in order to be considered that you've met the minimum safety standards?
No, that was not prescriptive in the bill. The standards would be set by the safety center.
Safety center. Okay. So my concern, and in speaking to many of my school districts around my district, they've sent me, I have here what the allotment would provide them versus what their current cost for security and the new bills that have passed, and every single one of them ends up in the red. They end up in a deficit versus the allotment versus their cost. Some of my smaller, poorer areas in my district, in my community, have significant cost differentials, and so my understanding is that the response that I've heard here on the floor is that the $1.2 billion that y'all have created for grants, that's supposed to be to help cover the school district's hard cost. Is that correct?
Yes, the more permanent features, door locks, if you want silent alarms, if you want doors automatically locked, fencing, fixing the windows, things like that.
And on the just cause exemption, who gets to determine whether or not that just cause is it TEA, or is it something that we have to be worried that somebody decides that the school's not safe? Is it a parent? Does the school board vote on it? How does that work?
It's established by the school board. What we've tried to do here is follow best practices as established by the Safety Center. And the best practice at a campus would be to have a licensed peace officer at each campus. But if you cannot do that for whatever your just cause is, then it goes into other areas that are determined by your school board to have a plan that you think is appropriate for your campuses.
Very good. My concern is that this armed guard provision might, and this is an expensive arm. If you hire a licensed peace officer in some communities, the expense is somewhere around $100,000 a year with benefits and everything all rolled up. And my concern is that there might cut in other areas in order to meet the armed guard provision. And so, while I really appreciate all of the work that you've incorporated here, this leads me back to when we were debating the amendment on the mental health allotment, which that would have created an independent allotment for counselors and other things. My fear is that however well-intentioned this bill is, continuing to have that armed guard provision, even though it has the escape hatch, might cause some school board members to say, this is what the legislature wants. We don't have a good cause not to do it. Let's put our school safety money towards that instead of something else. And so I appreciate you taking my questions. I know you worked really hard, and I know that you tried so hard to keep the bill as it was when it came off this floor. And I understand that it is a bicameral process and that we don't always get exactly what we want, but I thank you for taking my question.
Thank you. I appreciate your work. And you mentioned the mental health component of that. And there's training for mental health for the instructors, people that work with the kids, so that they can at least identify issues early on. And there's additional funding in the budget for the school consortium, mental health treatment to identify through TCHAT, give actual diagnosis the best they can through a TCHAT. But we don't want to treat these students at the school level. We want to identify and make sure there's treatment available that does not cost them anything.
Totally agree, and Mr. Chairman, completely agree with that. My biggest fear is that some school districts may say, we're going to meet the armed guard provision not by spending money, by bringing in a marshal, whoever that may be, a coach, maybe a guardian, maybe we ask some teacher, maybe we ask a vice principal, and that's not exactly what I think what's going to make all of the people who work in the building and potentially the people who are dropping their children off feel the safest. I think if it was a licensed peace officer, a police officer, I think they'd feel a lot better. My fear is that if we were going to have an armed guard provision, I would have rather us had licensed peace officer, and we're going to pay you for it. But thank you very much.
Thank you.